Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Mackey. I'm one of the co-founders over at Skillsline, and welcome to our NCDA 2024 pre-recording session. We're glad to give you a pre-look at what we're going to be doing live in person in San Diego. With me here today, Principal Andy Allen from Batesville, Indiana, Ms. Celeste Hall from the Virginia Community College System. So today we're going to talk about durable human skills and nurture versus nature, largely how these durable human skills can be taught and how they can be implemented and embedded in a variety of different contexts. So first we'll talk about what are the durable human skills, learning science principles with a Skillsline example, talk a little bit about Batesville, their work in Indiana under the Employability Skills Innovation and Implementation Grant. And then we'll even get into an interactive lesson. Right now, we have a strong economy. The unemployment rate is at a 53-year low with more than 2 jobs available for every unemployed worker. 85% of hiring managers are experiencing challenges hiring. Employers overwhelmingly saying their barrier to growth is hiring. What's going on here? But what are employers looking for? What everyone has recognized is that with the rapid pace of technological change, innately human skills are the most important in the workforce. So let's quickly level set on why this set of skills and this gap is so important. The organization America Succeeds coined the term durable skills to describe how you use what you know and how you show up in the world. And most importantly, how you show up in the workplace. These are the skills that can't be automated and are transferable across jobs, careers, and industries. In a massive study of 80 million job postings, America Succeeds found that 7 out of the top 10 most requested skills are durable skills. And yet 92% of employers say that new workforce entrants aren't prepared with these skills. Clearly, young people who can demonstrate to employers that they have these skills will be well prepared for the job market. The need for these skills is being recognized across the country at all levels and increasingly in education, and is part of our role as educators in teaching these durable human skills to our students. Here's just one example from Indiana. This is the Indiana Employability Skills Standards created by the Indiana Department of Education. Mindset, work ethic, learning strategies, social and emotional skills. In the age of AI, the need for these skills has increased again. Recognition that with AI to do so much of the technical work, the human skills are even more important. So now I'll turn it over to Celeste to take us through a little poll.
If we were here in person, we would be participating in a poll to look at who is it in your school or your organization who takes leadership for human skill development? So as you consider how to increase the integration of human skills in your school or organization, it's a good step first to sort of take an inventory about who's incorporating human skill development and who takes leadership in this area. So take a moment right now to think about your school or organization and what are the positions and who are the people who take responsibility for leadership in this area. Now, some of the options might be academic teachers, career technical education teachers, school counselors, administrators, coaches, and specialty teachers like art, music, or drama teachers. And there may actually be other staff members like media specialists, administrative assistants, custodial staff, bus drivers, cafeteria staff. Anyone who is interacting with students can have an impact on helping to build their durable human skills. All right, so what if you really don't have somebody in leadership who is focusing on developing these human skills in your school? How do you get started? How can you start to make an impact in this area? So one of the things that I would suggest based on the years that I worked in schools as a school counselor is to look for learning standards that include some aspect of human skills that are going to be measured in your school. And I'm going to suggest that you check out the new National Career Development Guidelines section on the NCDA website to help to provide some of these standards. You can also look at the workplace research, like some of the data that Chris has already shared. You can ask your local employers, because local employers are always talking about this need. We can teach the students how to do the job, but we need them to come with these human skills. The other thing that I remember from working in schools is that I would find those teachers who also have a passion for developing the human skills and who are committed to it, and start collaborating with them. So work with the people that will work with you in the beginning, and then they'll begin to see the benefit. They'll talk to other teachers in the school and hopefully spread the idea of how important this is. So wherever you can, start initiating programs and activities that have this human skill focus. Here's some more of the ideas that we can talk about. If you look at some of especially the CTE courses, you can highlight some of the co-curricular activities. If you look at the clubs, the Future Business Leaders of America, the Future Farmers of America, Skills USA, most of them have competitions that center around building employability and human skills. Also, one of the main focuses with human skills tends to be communication. Well, how many different subject areas in the school focus on communication? So you can always build in some sort of a communication activity to focus on human skills. And also, to bring your assistant principals on board, you can always focus on how building human skills in the school is going to have a positive impact on behavior in the school and can help to lessen the need for disciplinary referrals, because you're building social skills, communication, self-control, you're building self-concept, and you're working in conflict management. This is the point where we would do another poll. I'm going to ask you to think about what are the aspects of your school's programming and your behavioral climate in your school that focuses on human skills. And as you think about that, really when you start looking for activities that incorporate human skill development in your school, my guess is that you are really going to start seeing them everywhere. And as we talk more about this in the program, I think you'll start to see, oh, that happens in my school. Yes, we have activities like that where we can build in human skills. So part of the challenge really is to bring these activities to awareness and to start showing how they can be part of an overall effort in the school or the organization to increase the emphasis on human skills. And one last item. So recently, I've had the opportunity to visit some 3-year-old soccer activities. And I started to watch these children and their amazing coaches. And I started to think, wow, this is amazing. And how does this apply to some of the work that we do in education? So how do you teach 10 3-year-olds how to play soccer? How do you keep their attention? How do you get them to focus on the skills that you want them to learn? Well, what I observed with these coaches who connected with each child is that they found a way to involve them and to connect them to each other. They also took each skill and made a game or a social activity out of it. So the children watched each other and participated with each other. So in a nutshell, these coaches are focusing on one skill at a time, and they're making it fun.
Thank you, Celeste. Let's talk now about how we see schools trying to address this gap. There are various ways. Team projects, presentations, and internships are intended to put students in environments to use their human skills, with the assumption that students will pick up what they need along the way, Go be in the team, go communicate. Mentors and coaches will situationally teach human skills by addressing opportunities they see in the moment. And all of these opportunities are valuable for sure, but in all of them, we continue to rely on happenstance. For some students, that will work, but too many will get caught in the gap. The truth is that these skills aren't just innate, they can be learned, and that starting with awareness of the fundamentals pays dividends for the long term. So, what if every kid was taught these skills systematically, right? With the same emphasis and intentionality that math teachers, baseball coaches, and piano instructors teach their fundamentals and techniques of their disciplines. That's the answer to closing this gap. Just like every other discipline, human skills can be broken down, the fundamentals can be intentionally taught, and students can be drawn into their learning while building relationships with trusted adults. So let's move along to the learning science and a little bit of specifics around a Skillsline as an example before we move into the practical application and the embedding of these skills in a high school. So first of all, just like every other discipline we teach, teaching human skills starts with what we know from learning science. Neuroscience research into how people learn new information shows 3 phases that happen in the brain: encoding, consolidation, and retrieval. And there are proven ways that we can better support each of those processes. Additionally, the learning environment plays a role in enhancing or detracting from learning. So how we address all of these factors, all of them, is best to be considered in developing a learning program for human skills. And that's what we do at Skillsline. We're a human skills company that offers a systematic approach to teaching human skills through bite-sized micro lessons that lead to reflection, growth, and deep discussions in the classroom. Now, not to say that we've got it 100% right, but I'm going to give some examples of how we've done this at Skillsline. I think we can all acknowledge that the concepts in a discipline like durable human skills can be a little messy, complex, and interwoven, like a tapestry. So we've structured the content to create a systematic way to approach it. Here you see an overview of that. 5 distinct competencies along the top, each one broken into 4 or 5 modules, which are the green boxes. And then within each module are 4 to 5 micro lessons that really break down the content into more discrete, practical, and focused skills. The structure gives us the opportunity to be intentional about incorporating learning science principles like scaffolding and spaced retrieval to enforce learning and intentionally connect related concepts and skills. So the scope of the content we cover is broad, everything from self-management and agency to interacting with others, to effectively responding to situations and environment, to processing and creating information, creating with others. The scope of human skills is broad, and we wanted Skillsline to be a comprehensive tool covering the full range of human skills. Our intention is that the Skillsline platform can sit alongside any academic or technical training program and support the human skills learning that is most needed by learners in that program. So let's hear from someone that is embedding human skills through Skillsline in their program. This is Ms. Versana Polidor from Jobs for America's Graduates in Louisiana. She'll explain to you how it was to teach human skills before Skillsline.
It was all in the thumbnail moment. Something happened. Let's talk about it. But now through Skillsline, it's a direct, step-by-step approach. This is some emotions that you feel. This is how you identify what those emotions are. Now, let me give you some tips on how to manage that. It is such an organized, systematic way to approach it instead of grabbing the teachable moments. And they like the personal questions in between. I think the question asked, are you a worrier? That type of a question, because it's getting them to do some introspection that usually we don't get kids to do. One of the questions in the day before lesson was, do you know when you're starting to feel stress? And the kids were saying, nobody ever asked me that before. Like, that's deep.
Mrs. V has spent many years in public education in rural Louisiana and currently teaches middle school, focusing on classrooms that have a majority of students with IEPs and special services. We love Mrs. V's infectious enthusiasm for her work and her kids, but we also love hearing her reflect on this transition to a systematic approaching for teaching and developing human skills. But she also reinforced some important insights there. You can haphazardly teach the human skills by grabbing the thumbnail moments when a need appears, or you can recognize their importance and take an organized, structured approach to teaching the fundamentals. The awareness, recognition, and strategy, those are the fundamentals, so that students can build and improve their skills intentionally day by day. Within the content, we focus on teaching those fundamentals, or building blocks, if you will, of human skills. That includes building awareness that these are valuable skills, awareness of how to identify and talk about them, and awareness of strategies that can be used to demonstrate them. This enables learners to then be intentional about practicing these skills. What we want to see is learners' recognition of how these skills show up in their lives and their ability to start reflecting on what's working and what's not working, and generating ideas on how they can improve. Let's talk a moment about teamwork as an example of how this all works. As I mentioned earlier, this is such a common skill that we check the box on by having young people work on projects with a team. But when you really think about what it takes to be good at teamwork, there are actually so many different components. To name a few: building trust, setting norms, assigning roles, aligning on purpose, setting deadlines, but also boundaries, taking ownership and holding others accountable, giving and accepting feedback, trusting your team, creating effective meetings, managing conflict, making decisions. They're all interwoven. And when something goes wrong, what tools do our students have to diagnose what the component is they need to work on? They can't just hear, go be a better team member. What is it specifically they need to work on? When we leave this process to chance, to a trial and error approach, we leave out an incredibly important set of learning that our students need. But if they've learned all of these building blocks, then they can reflect on what specifically they think that didn't work, and they can identify what they're going to try to do differently the next time to get a better outcome. So that's what we mean when we talk about teaching the fundamentals to enable learning through intentional practice and iteration. So to return to our learning science principles, the way we offer content to learners further supports those three phases of learning. Content is presented through micro lessons that take no more than 10 minutes to complete, which maximizes focus, concentration, and retention. Starting with a clear learning question and then using a Socratic learning method rather than an ingest and regurgitate or sage on the stage model. We use that Socratic learning method throughout each lesson, first to clarify the purpose, and then requiring learners to think about and engage with the content, and then offering Skillsline on any connected device, available anytime, anywhere, points, leaderboards, and celebration built in learning in conducive places and time, and encourages ongoing engagement. And finally, our content-aligned facilitation support materials and professional learning emphasize the importance of enhancing human relationships while building human skills. While the online micro lessons enable flexible, independent learning and getting everybody on the same page in terms of a common language, equal to all that is facilitating discussions with and among learners about their understandings and reflections of how these skills show up in their lives. and how they can relate to and enhance other learning experiences. This communal learning component is the place where human skills learning can be put into context and where you can connect more deeply to students and tap into the social brain that encourages deeper processing through social interaction. So let's move on now to Principal Andy Allen and his work at Batesville High School.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Celeste, and welcome everybody. As we start to look at how we at Batesville High School look at employability skills. So to introduce you to Batesville, we are located in Batesville, Indiana, which is, you can see by the star there, in the southeastern part of the state. We actually identify with the Cincinnati market as opposed to Indianapolis, but we're equidistant from Indianapolis to Cincinnati. Located in small town USA, which we are several international companies such as Wood-Mizer, Batesville Tool and Die. We also are the home of Hillenbrand Inc., which used to be Batesville Casket, and also Hillrom, which is now Baxter. So we have a very heavy manufacturing community, but also an independent healthcare. Margaret Mary Health, for example, our local independent healthcare network, is looking to expand in our area. So what does that mean for us? When we look at what our high school and our K-12 continuum looks like, you'll see there in the middle, Bulldog Ready. So as we undergo this initiative, Bulldog Ready is a K-12 transformative experience where we have community connected learning through real world experiences. And simply what that means is we want to make our students from kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade continuum aware of the career opportunities that are available, not here just in Batesville, Indiana, but also aligned to, most importantly, the student interest. And so we have very specific guidelines, what we call guaranteed experiences, in connection with the Ford NGL network, Next Generation Learning Network, that has guided us through this process so that kids have a level of employability awareness, career awareness, and also professional skill development, employability skill development throughout the entire process. So who do we partner with in that regard? In addition to our community, you see some of our long-standing partners at the bottom of the screen. Batesville Tool and Die, which was the forerunner of this endeavor as we launched Project Lead the Way back in 2008, and also the Manufacturing Cooperative Program, partnering local industry, Ivy Tech Community College there in the middle, the largest community college in the nation, also the only one of two community colleges in Indiana, and then also the Southeastern Indiana Career Center, allowing for our students to take classes at Batesville High School during the day, also at Ivy Tech during the day, and then have real world work experiences at Batesville Tool and Die in the field of manufacturing. You'll see to the right, also we had look at the Batesville Plus Ones. And so locally in Indiana, as we're undergoing the high school redesign initiative, the Plus Ones are the goals or the attainables, the tangible outcomes beyond a diploma. The Indiana College Core, simply by legislative code, says that if a student earns a total of 30 or more credit hours divided through different categories as established by the Commission for Higher Education, then those credits are transferable directly into every state institution and almost every private institution in our area. Through the efforts of many within Indiana to the transferability of college credit, those now have also extended well beyond our borders so that students can enter the post-secondary realm right into the field of industry or without much delay into their intended field of study. You also look at our work with Ivy Tech, and we look at the CT, the TC, the certificate or technical certificate, where students take something tangible from this. So in our world, a high school diploma is an expectation, not necessarily a goal. The goal is, what do I have tangible to take with me into the workforce? Whether I go right into a 4-year institution or a hybrid look at a 2-year employment and also a work experience. We also have a large percentage of students who earn an associate's degree. Again, highly transferable in credit. All of these things go together for our local high school to benefit our local community. You look at the 5 pieces here that make up our work-based learning. And so when we say work-based learning, we're talking about a lot of things. We're talking about cadet teaching, mentorship. Broadly, in our world, it means that our kids leave our building during part of the day. By doing that, we often exhibit the employability skills many of us want to do. So we will have students that will arrive on campus, take a traditional college or high school course, such as U.S. history, government, math, English, just the traditional high school courses, and then leave for experiences that take place off of our campus. We believe that the best way to teach employability skills is by actually doing them. And so we allow that environment today. The 5 pillars at the top, the purpose and goal setting, are guided by targeted thinking, which very simply ask, what do I want and what needs to be done? So we're asking kids in this work-based learning environment and overall their high school experience, what do you want out of it? And then what needs to be done? And then focus on 3 priorities, 3 targets within specifically the work-based learning evolution. And that's where the focus of this presentation is today. We also want to look at the real world experiences. So I go back to the concept of a student who reports to Batesville High School on time, takes a class, leaves our campus, goes to a different employer or different work site, then is able to engage in work and also engage with different people, demonstrating independence during the day. They also oftentimes are assigned a time to be back at Batesville High School. So we're practicing in real world scenarios, both independence and time management. We also know with the intentional skill development piece. And so this actually starts for us in the 9th grade and continues through the senior year. We're big believers in the Pareto principle, right? Where we know that 80% of the outcome is focused on 20% of the work. And with that, then we want to make sure that we're focused on that 20% of our skill that allows us to leverage those opportunities off of our campus. We're strength focused. We recognize we all have different strengths. How do we leverage those strengths in our experiences? The key to some of this is also found in the reflection. Oftentimes what we think we want to do, even if aligned with our strengths, aren't necessarily the environments that we want to be in. There's profound relevance in finding out I do not like the work that I'm going to have to do in a field I thought I was interested in. We oftentimes find that in reflection. And so oftentimes we look at how do we look to measure these skills? And so we do it in 2 ways. One, through reflection. Our assessment is entirely actionable, and different things that we look to do go back to the concept of targeted thinking, all focused on the concept of what do I want, what needs to be done, and what are my 3 targets. We do not give any tests as far as the employability skills. We measure them in different ways. How did some of these grow through Skillsline? And we'll go through this activity later on in the presentation. With that, also the 5th one, and perhaps the most important, is the relationship building that we have with 16, 17, 18-year-old students. This program, specifically work-based learning, is only available to our juniors and seniors. So these are students who have earned the right to be a part of this process, to build relationships outside the building. We took an extension of that this year in our program, where our students, through their mentors, look to network through the mentors network to say, who can you connect me with so I may build my network in your industry? And we'll look at some examples of that momentarily. But these 5 pillars make up not only our work-based learning, but our overall thought process of how the high school experience will work for our graduates. In Indiana right now, we're going through the high school redesign process. And so we are one of a few states in the nation that are looking to say, what really do we want our high school experience, therefore our outcomes, to look like? Indiana is leading the way in this initiative, and it currently is undergoing the 2nd comment period, and will in July put forth a 2nd draft of what the new high school diploma will look like for the class of 2029. Here's what we do know, that these 5 categories, which is also part of the Indiana Graduates Prepared to Succeed, Indiana GPS, measure all schools under these 5 categories: academic mastery, career and post-secondary readiness. Specifically, what credentials and experiences are they able to have while in the high school? Communication and collaboration, work ethic, and then the bottom piece of this is civic, financial, and digital literacy. As my voice speaks very highly of what this looks like from a practitioner's level, the video to the right, the last third of the video, which we'll see here, are our kids giving our voice, their voice, to what their high school experience has been like at Batesville High School, leading to the need and the desire to reform the high school experience.
I'm earning an associate's degree, and I also go to the hospital for a mentorship program. I want to become a physical therapist. I'm getting all the experiences that I would want to have, both taking college classes, taking classes here, and experiencing the work that I one day want to do. If I didn't have this high school experience, I don't think I'd be as prepared as I am today, and my high school experience would not be as valuable as it is right now.
My senior year, being able to start up my own business and actually make money for myself, it just feels great.
I'm confident that my work-based learning has set me up for success after high school.
Why would I want to walk out of my senior year with no idea of what I want to do?
It truly is incredible to see where this is going, and it might just be in the growing stages, but it truly is going somewhere, and it's going to be incredible for the future.
So how do we evaluate this? Right? You heard from our students' voice. How do we evaluate their experiences? So again, we talked about the purpose statement and targeted thinking. Nature versus nurture. What is the nature of what we're trying to accomplish, right? So we had all of our students this year say, what am I trying to accomplish? What do I want to do in these experiences, right? And so we've listed the 4 reasons of what makes a great purpose statement, because we all want to learn. We all want to explore. These are elective credits. So these are all students who have chosen to be in this type of environment. So if you're chosen to be in here and you've chosen your mentor in the field of which you want to study, what do you want to accomplish? So then we move to the concept of targeted thinking, nurturing this. How do I And also, how do I work with my mentor to answer two very simple questions? What do I want? And now what needs to be done? So let me show you some examples of what we found this year. This was from a student who mentored in a law office, right? I want to get a head start on what I will learn about while in law school by viewing briefs and courses that may be useful on the bar exam. So by nature, she wanted to do this. The nurture standpoint, the targeted thinking, these are the three things that I want to accomplish in my 90 to 180 minutes each every other day with my mentor. And you see the three very specific targets that this student went after. What's interesting about this student is a junior at Batesville High School and is mentoring with a recent graduate of Batesville High School who's now opened up a law office here in town. And so this is the connection that we have in this community. This program has had very different renditions or versions of it over the last 25 years. But this attorney, Blaine Timonera, also was a part of this program and became interested in the field of law in some ways based upon his experience in high school, now able to give back. And so you can see the three targets that our student was aiming at. And so along with that, we wanted to say, as we listed earlier in the program, the 18 employability skills identified by Indiana. What our great partners with Skillsline has done is said, let's take these 18 employability skills and let's map them to a Skillsline module. So you see on the left, independence, where the definition of the DOE, successfully carry out expectations with minimal supervision. That's Indiana Department of Education definition of it. We also want to make sure we communicate with visuals. And so as you can see the two signs here, we know that our students in all areas look at what a written definition looks like, a visual definition of it. And then we also want to look at what learning module is this. So one of the hallmarks of our program is not just using our definitions of it or the Department of Education's definition of it, but how so do you learn more? And so the module you see here was show accountability through Skillsline, or if we look at lifelong learning, the Skillsline module, embrace learning, those allow for the students in micro lessons to take 10-minute courses based upon the concepts of the skills that are identified here and start to expand upon based upon researched efforts on what the overall definition and application of it is. Chris and I are the Skillsline in Batesville High School. We're able to partner with other schools through the Employability Skills Grant in Indiana to be part of the employability playbook that Indiana was able to develop in partnership with America Succeeds. And so we provided that download there in between the two modules. So we also talked about networking. So not only do we want kids to be able to be practitioners, we want them to understand the definition of it. We also want them to talk to people and develop their own network. And so this is a reflection piece, the application of the networking activity, where a student was working at a vet clinic and asked her veterinary techs and the vets in the clinic to say, hey, can you connect me with somebody within your network so that I may learn more specifically about what it would be like to be a veterinarian. And this is just a small reflection of what this learning took place. But all of the skills that we're desiring to assess or desiring to practice took place on there. Not only did I have to communicate with my mentor and explain exactly what I wanted, I also had to go meet somebody new and go through a very simple activity as far as interviewing different questions, writing reflection, but creating that connection. And by creating the connection and building the relationship, we're helping students who are, again, at the junior and senior level in fields of study that they're interested in, start to build their network, build confidence, learn very specific skills that we all at times take for granted as we create our own network. But imagine the power of a 16, 17, 18-year-old student being able to do that with different adults. In our reflection periods, we saw this more than anything else be the area of growth for our kids, the confidence to talk with other adults outside their level of familiarity, which up until this point was all within the walls of Batesville High School. And this is how we evaluated it. So very early on in this semester, we asked students to create a purpose statement and create 3 targets along with it. You'll see the word final in front of each one of them. The very first day that we met in class, we had our students say, you need to create a draft of what you want the purpose statement to be, and then draft of the 3 targets that you are looking to hit. They then had to meet with their supervisor to make sure that everyone understood what was the expectation from both sides of the agreement, from the student side and from the mentor side, as to what this experience would look like. And so this speaks specifically to a student who, with the Indiana Pharmacy Association, that was an online learning course that she was able to be a part of and a mentor with to work with pharmacy students. So this is a reflection piece of it. So as we start this again, this is the reflection piece that we had at the end of the semester. So we asked kids in a setting where we gave them reflection questions, and we had a 10 to 15 minute debrief based upon the evaluation that their supervisor filled out. The number one question we started with at each time which target did you have the most success in meeting? What factors do you think were the most critical to your success? And this is a response from one of our students. We wanted them to focus first on the strengths. What targets were you able to hit that you started, in many cases, 4 months prior, and then worked at least 2 times a week, somewhere between 90 to 180 minutes in each setting? What were you working towards along the way so that we could reflect upon that at the end? Then we also asked this: what targets still require more work? And so when we look at the targets again, it focuses all of our activities back to what our students want to do and what the targets they set out beforehand. And in a lot of ways, we looked at, yes, in some cases it was more work than I thought. My mentor's busy. We heard that a lot, which is good. It's hard to devote time to learn with others, but when they were able to do so, we found that students along the way gained levels of independence where their mentor at times just left them alone. And our kids, some think, well, they trust me more. I'm like, I'm not sure they necessarily trust you more, but they've gained confidence in you to be able to work independently because you had learned the skills that were desirable. And so this is an example here of which of the targets not only maybe require more work, but also what would we do differently in the future if we were to achieve these goals that were stated. That's one way to we evaluate it. The second way is you see here, and we were very specific in implementing this piece of it. We wanted students to see from the application piece, if I was going to choose effective communication, here is the way the Indiana Department of Education defines it. We also wanted the students, in their own words, to be able to define effective communication, right, as it applies to their experience. And this is a student who worked in a physical therapist office. How does this skill apply to my purpose statement? So we've got different levels of application, all in the student's words, back to the original definition as created by the Department of Education. Then how do I apply this information from Skillsline? So if you think back a couple slides where we said, we're going to have every one of these modules. So effective communication had 2 modules that it was tied to. Go through the learning and then pick out where from Skillsline you thought that this applied throughout my experience. And then finally at the end, the supervisor's comments, where we wanted to, as the student presented this, the first 4 boxes completed to their mentor. We wanted the mentor to evaluate this with the individual and provide comments back to how Jake specifically in this case did in this area of effective communication over time. The assessment, the final assessment, which occurred in this case as I led this course with Jake, was Jake had to explain all of this to me in a 10 to 15 minute debrief. So if you think about the skills that we're having kids apply here in these settings multiple times, how does this apply to me in my own words after I've learned some of the definitions? They understand that in many cases in the professional setting that we understand, how does it work to me in the situation that I'm in? So we'll stop there. And the best way to go through this, we thought online would be a little bit difficult. In person, we'll actually go through the steps is, what would an interactive lesson look like for you? As if you're watching this, you are in many cases involved in the career development of somebody. So this not only applies to high school students, also post-secondary students who may be working in an intern setting or new employees. So the flexibility of Skillsline and teaching the employability skills applies to all levels of experience and all levels of education for each student. So in our lesson, we would very simply ask this: define the problem. What exactly is critical thinking? And so you can see the Skillsline defines critical thinking here. What you'll see is in the middle is a link to a Google document that you'll be able to create your own copy that has this. What would be your definition of critical thinking? And then what would we want to get if we were to say, let's teach critical thinking to either a student, to an intern, or to a new employee? What would be the purpose of how critical thinking applies to this very specific job responsibility? And what would be the 3 targets that we want this individual to attack or to go after in this experience, all related to the purpose statement? So pause now, if you'd like, and complete your definition of what critical thinking is, your draft purpose statement, and the 3 targets that you'd want your intern or student to attempt to complete over the course of a semester. We then move into what we call the incubation phase. So we're simply going to think about it. On the right, a lot of this work with employability skills in a different way to assess comes from a TED Talk by Dr. George Land, The Failure of Success. In this 3-minute video, which we play now, which is a small snippet of his TEDx talk, talks about how we look at creativity and how in a traditional classroom setting, we oftentimes limit, therefore reduce our students from age 5 all the way through adulthood to limit their creativity. We'll watch this video now.
But the idea emerged that, we still don't know where creativity comes from. Is it that some people are born with it and others not? Or is it learned? Does it come from our experience in life? And the idea came up, this test is so simple. Why don't we give it to some children and see how they do? So we did. We created a sample of the American population with 1,600 children and started it out when they were about 5 years old. Now here's a question I want to ask you. This is a test for the ability to look at a problem and come up with new, different, and innovative ideas. What percentage of those 5-year-olds fell into what you might call the genius category of imagination? 80, 90, wow. This is a great audience. There are some audiences that don't guess quite that high. 98%. We were pretty shocked. Some people like you would probably not be shocked. You probably, I suspect you've been 5-year-olds, so there you are. But the information was so astonishing, we decided to turn that into a longitudinal study, go back 5 years later and see how they're doing. So we went back, they're now 10. What would you guess? Somebody came on very close. 30%. We decided to extend it for 5 more years. They're now 15. Well, we have some pessimists out there. It was all the way up to 12. So you can see something of a trend here, right? That study ended because so many people got depressed. Most of the testing was done by teachers, and they just didn't want to do it again. But we have tested a lot of adults. And what would you guess? You're close. 2%. Now, the great historian Oswald Spengler once said, in all of his years of studying history, he had concluded it only takes 2% of a population to create the basic ideas and that everybody else applies them. And it turned out, gee, he was pretty close to right. Look, folks, if we're going to enter the future with hope, that's not going to work. We have to do something about it.
As you can see in this graphic, 5-year-olds tested at a 98% creativity level. Disappointingly, over time, you see that the progression through the traditional public education space and just traditional education space in general, we start to limit and reduce the level of creativity of our students in search of results. So how do we bring back the creativity in our classrooms? How do we bring back the creativity, not only for our students, but also our adults? So not only are our kids over time becoming less creative, but our adults are actually entering the workforce, entering the education profession at the lowest point of creativity. So how do we bring those things back in a system that is so geared towards results that we don't allow time for the process? We've got to think critically about how that goes and what we're asking our classroom environments to do and what type of graduates we're looking to produce. I go back to the concept of right now you should be thinking about what you want your purpose statement to be and the targets. So as we created a draft, now we're going to come to the final purpose statement and the final targets that we would give somebody. And we do this with all of our students in work-based learning. On both ends of this, what does the student want and what does the supervisor want? This is how we verify and test this at Batesville High School. Do we understand it? Do we all understand what the goal of this experience is going to be? And then how do we reflect upon it? So over the course of 4 months, in many cases, and sometimes over the case of the year, as we looked at, and our classes meet on every other Monday, we also want to relate this back to a Batesville High School cultural goal that we share with all of our students and our faculty members. We value relationships based upon connectivity, honest feedback, and heartfelt support. I'm a big believer in the concept of feedback as a gift. Who, though, is willing to provide and receive authentic feedback? That's the key of any reflection, and that's the key not only of at the final product of it, but an activity that we did with our students is before they were able to meet with their supervisor or to meet with one of our teachers to give the final presentation, they had to get feedback, critical feedback from students and make revisions. We forced that into the overall evaluation process. This timer that you see here was a part of an activity that we actually weren't sure how it was going to work or how it would be received by students. It became one of the best activities that we did in the classroom setting by simply practicing the ability to talk and communicate with each other with a timer and pre-populated questions so that they could interact with one another. We did this several times before we even talked about or before we even presented what the final purpose statement and targets were to each other, so peer to peer, but also then what the final product was going to be, so that we could make specific revisions in order to make the final product better. A key point of this is what we oftentimes miss in our own profession, is how often do we give work back to students, allow them to revise, get more feedback, and revise again, right? We try to do that in we do this in two separate scenarios in our work-based learning class, where we get feedback, we make revisions, we get more feedback, and we make revisions again. The process actually shortens as you continue to make revisions. But what we found through this process is the quality of work, as you might imagine, for students continued to get better, shorter, and more specific over time as feedback was both given, received, filtered, working towards a final product. And so as we go to the final slide here, it goes back to the creativity piece. In our own educational realm, and there's a lot of things that are placed upon the public and private education system. So this isn't an indictment on how we do things in education, but it is a recognition, though, however, that over the course of looking at specific results, and results do matter. At the same time, though, we have to look at what opportunities we provide kids, the processes we have in place, and the experiences that we allow for. And how creative can we be? And how can we allow kids creativity? How can we allow the creativity of our adults, who at one point in time were part of the 98% that tested at the very creative genius level, to bring those things back into our classrooms? Not an all day, every day type of environment, but very specific lessons that we're looking to embed these employability skills, because these types of skills that are listed here in Indiana that we're putting into classrooms are applicable not only to all classrooms, but all intern experiences, and also all of our work as we onboard new and oftentimes younger employees. And to the right, you see the Batesville High School 7-step creative process, done in completion and done in order, allows for all of the employability skills listed in Indiana to be hit within one project in and of itself. That's how we're able to do it. We continue to evolve the process. One thing we asked at the end of every evaluation, what'd you learn and what could we do better? And we took both of those comments and we started to disaggregate them. And we looked very specifically at what changes we can make over the course of the year to see what works for us and what works for the students to bring a better overall environment and an experience to the learning environment for our kids.
Before we get into those three takeaways that we wanted to highlight to the audience, Andy, I was wondering, do you have any stories where you've seen a progression of a student with Skillsline within your program? What are the changes you see over that 3 months, 6 months, year?
The two things that we see the most is the ability to gain in confidence and the ability to gain independence. And those are hard things to measure. But if you think of it this way, from an independence standpoint, we are allowing kids to leave our campus. An interesting story that we had that it also shows accountability to this as well. We want kids to be able to track their own attendance. They simply have to log in to a Google Sheet that we've created. We have a specific metric as part of, but not the overall grade, of just simply clocking in at one time during the experience. They have independence, they have accountability in addition to where they're going. One of the most frustrating parts of this for students was this missing or this logging in and the recording of their own attendance, of which they had 100% control of. Those who were able to miss a few and were notified of that started to set reminders on their phones. They created their own system of time management so that they could log into the system. It seems minor, but if you look at what am I in control of in this experience, is not only what my overall experience might look like, but also what I'm expected to do simply just to log in on a Google Sheet to record my attendance. It was an interesting dynamic to watch that evolve over the course of a semester and a year of giving kids control and accountability over just a very simple act. The second part of that is our kids as they leave high school. So you think of this as a foreign environment. They're leaving a very comfortable setting. So these are juniors and seniors who have spent 2 and 3 years with us. They're now going into a completely foreign setting, all the way from a Margaret Mary Hospital, where we're actually working with doctors and patients, to a Batesville Tool and Die, to a stamping plant, or to an entrepreneurial or small business. The interaction with a 16, 17, 18-year-old on the part of the employer is eye-opening. At the same time, our kids are scared to death. And that's just, it's natural to think that. Almost to a person, they would say they gain confidence over time interacting with adults in all sorts of different ways. A byproduct of this, however, and we used to actually prohibit students working with their parents. We've since reduced that. And I think for all sorts of ways, it made sense to small town USA, kind of all related to anybody down here, everybody anyway. So you're going to be working with somebody you're related to. We gain an appreciation for what our parents do, how hard our parents work, what that might look like. And we've had several students say, I just want to be able to help my parents so I can answer questions over time so that my mom or dad had more time to work. Those are things that when we took away from this that give it, they're hard to quantify. I grew my independence X, Y, and Z. I can do it on a test score, but that's going to go in one ear out the other. If I'm independent enough to be there on time, to log in and answer questions that customers might have, and oftentimes these kids are at the front line, I'm the one that's able to answer questions so that the people that I'm reporting to, the people that have agreed to take me on, can do some of their other vital work while I'm there.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I always appreciate the stories and hearing how the students change and develop over time. So there are many takeaways here. As I was listening to Principal Andy Allen speak through the program at Batesville and thinking about the resources that NCDA offers and Celeste's reflections, I started to make a longer list, but these three, I think, are the good summary. These skills can be taught, right? They're oftentimes used as a way for employers to weed people out, and employers say, I don't have a way to teach them. So it's becoming more and more our responsibility as educators and career development professionals to teach these skills. And remember, they're not innate. They are skills that can be broken down into behaviors that people can do in the real world and understand them before they do them. Secondly, learning human skills is a human process. You're just not going to get it from looking at an app. Now, Skillsline, if you talk about us, we do have an app, we have a learning platform, but the discussions, what Andy described was all about that human connection, right? The discussions build relationships and understanding. The best way to learn human skills is to go practice them in the real world. The best way to be prepared for the real world is to learn human skills and for us to teach them, not technology driven, just to point that out. And finally, listening to Batesville, hearing the stories of those students, durable skills can be embedded in your context, whether that's secondary, whether that's post-secondary, or whether you're an employer. So these durable skills can be embedded in a variety of different contexts. And we welcome you to contact us, reach out with any questions. We talk pretty regularly. So whoever you thought might be the most photogenic, reach out to that person and we'll get us all together and respond to your questions. But really would like to thank you, Andy. Thank you, Celeste, and especially thank you to the audience for being here today and hearing about our work together. Thank you.